Next up, we need to talk about the proper way of structuring an HTML document. So far, this is what we've done. We've just thrown our content in the document, and the browser has been able to figure it out. However, we've actually technically been doing it wrong. A real document is supposed to have what I would call a skeleton or boilerplate that is always the same for every single document. And it looks like this. It's kind of a lot when you're starting out, but the good news is there's a very easy shortcut to get this generated for us. And in fact, if I inspect this web page in the browser, you can see that this content is here. There's a HTML element, head, body. I did not type any of that, but that's all part of the correct structure that I'm introducing. So the browser kind of figured out that we messed up and it added it in for us, but we shouldn't rely on that. So here's the basic structure. We start with what's called the doctype declaration, and this is the weirdest part. It doesn't have a closing tag. It looks like this, doctype in all caps, a space, HTML. This basically tells the browser, hey, we're using HTML here. Specifically, it tells it what mode of HTML. It doesn't really matter. Just put it at the top of your document. So we can start with that. In our CSS or in our HTML document, we should start with doctype HTML and inside of angle brackets, but we don't close it like this. It's just a single tag. Then we have an HTML element, and this tells the browser everything inside of this opening and closing tag is to be treated as HTML. So if you have questions about this stuff, you can ask them, but also it's just the sort of thing we always do. So I'm going to get rid of all of my code for a moment. I'll just cut it out, keep it on my clipboard. We have our opening tag and closing tag, and all of our content goes in here. No HTML should be down here. All of it is inside of the HTML element. And then we have the body. Let's start there. This is the easiest part. The body is where we put all of the content that you see on the page, all of our elements we've learned so far. So I'm going to paste in my H1 element, my paragraphs, everything we learned for the next while is going to go in here. But then we also have this thing called the head. And the head is where we put metadata and information about the document. It's also where we'll link to style sheets and font files when we get to CSS. So it has a purpose. But for us right now, we don't have much to put in there. But let's put it in here anyway because we're supposed to have it. So head, opening and closing tags. Here it is. And then the body comes second. So just make sure you see that. Head and then body. And then inside the head, we usually have what's called a title element. And this title won't have a visual impact on what we see on the page, but it will be used to determine what is shown in the browser tab. Right there, right there, right there. Those are all the titles of the web page. And Google also uses the title, and other web crawlers use the title when crawling across your web page to categorize and give your page a name. So we should always have a title. It goes in the head. So opening head, closing head, we put the title inside. And then in here, I'll put some name like our first web page. And then I'm going to save. If I go back to my browser and I refresh the page, watch the tab right here, it now has our title, our first web page. But it never shows up in the actual content. This is the body. Everything we see here is in the body. The head is for more metadata about the page, links to style sheets when we get there, fonts, and the title. So it can be annoying to type this out yourself, and you can forget, especially when you're starting out, exactly what you're supposed to have in what order. Fortunately, VS Code gives us a very easy shortcut. I'm just going to cut this all out. In an HTML document, if I type an exclamation point and then I hit tab, look at what it makes for me. Doctype HTML, HTML. Head, title, body. Now it puts some other stuff in here. We're not going to worry about this. This is not bad to have in there. These are called meta tags. They're good to put in there. It's not a problem, but you don't need to type them out yourself. They come with the exclamation point tab. And then you can fill in your title. You can fill in whatever content goes in the body, and you don't have to type that whole structure yourself. So whatever you prefer, type it out yourself, use the shortcut. Just remember the shortcut is exclamation point tab. And that's it for our basic structure. We are now conforming to the rules of HTML. We're not relying on the browser to fix our issues. And the most important thing to remember is the head is for meta stuff. The body is for the actual body of your web page. All of your content goes in there. Okay. All right, so continuing on with the basics of HTML, next we're going to talk about comments, which aren't really an element, but they are a piece of syntax that comes in handy in HTML. Comments allow us to basically tell the browser, ignore this. Don't treat this as code. Don't treat this as anything. And they serve two main purposes. Basically, we can leave notes for ourselves. So I can put a comment in here. If, let's say, you're following along and you want to write a note to yourself about, what the head is for or what the body is for. So you might say something like, put content here in body, something like that. But of course, if I save that and refresh the page, well, now that's just treated as text. And even though it's not inside of a paragraph, the browser doesn't care. It's just going to render the text. It doesn't do anything fancy, but it treats it as text because that's what it is. So this is where comments come in handy. We can use this syntax, which I'll show you a shortcut for because it's kind of a pain to type. Less than, or opening angle bracket, exclamation point, dash, dash, and then on the other side of it, dash, dash, greater than sign. So we can do that here, less than, exclamation point, dash, dash, and then corresponding, I'd call it the arrow on the end of it. And you can see that VS Code now treats this differently. It gives it sort of a grayed out, italicized styling. If I save and I refresh the page, it's now gone. The browser completely ignores it. It pretends, well, it doesn't pretend. It basically doesn't exist in the eyes of HTML. So you can leave yourself notes this way. That's the first use case. The other one is if you're writing code and you temporarily need to turn something off. So for whatever reason, I want to get rid of this first paragraph. I don't want to delete it. I still want a record of it. I can wrap it in our comment tags like this. It's grayed out in VS Code. That's just visually showing me that this is a comment. The browser is going to ignore it. I save, refresh the page, and the browser does ignore it. But again, it's still here. So I can toggle things on and off and decide if I want to reintroduce it without having to retype it. I still have a record of my earlier code. Save, and now it's back. That's really all there is to comments. There is a shortcut in VS Code. If I select something like this H1 and I type command / I believe on Windows it is control / it's something / might be option. It will toggle that on and off. And if you're not sure what the shortcut is, like I'm not sure right now for Windows what it is, if I hold Command Shift P, and I know on Windows this is Control Shift P, it opens something called the command palette. And in here, I can search. If I do comment, you'll see down at the bottom, toggle line comment. For me, it shows the shortcut is command / I can also just click this and it toggles a comment there. But I would just use that to find out what the correct command is on your platform. And then if I'm on this line and I hold that command / it turns the whole line into a comment. Refresh the page, that H1 no longer shows up. I can then undo it by doing command /. And you can see I'm toggling it on and off. I use this all the time. If I wanted to just get rid of this stuff for a moment, select it, use the shortcut, command /. And one more time, to find out what that shortcut is, you can do command Shift P or control Shift P and search for comment, and it will show you all the different comment related commands. And the one we want is toggle line comment, and whatever this shortcut is here for you. Okay, so that is comments. They're not really an element, but they're still useful.